I thought it was about time that I recorded an episode that helps you to determine whether or not you're actually in perimenopause and or midlife. I know I've had some conversations with women who are about in their 50s and they're like, is this midlife? Is that how I would call it? And also had conversations recently with women in their 30s who are just starting to experience symptoms and kind of trying to figure out, is this perimenopause? So I recorded this episode for you to help you answer that question. And I also have a resource for you to help support you during perimenopause. It is the Perimenopause Survival Guide, which you can get in the show notes. And if you are loving this pod, please remember to hit the follow button, hit subscribe. If you're on YouTube, leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. And share it with a friend. Share this episode in particular with somebody who you know might be coming into perimenopause, who could really use the support. I'm your host, Lori Lisai, human design teacher and midlife coach, here to help you use human design to shed the shoulds and be who you came here to be. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to Midlife by Design. I have a short episode for us today because I have spoken recently with a few of the listeners here on Midlife by Design who are not quite sure if they're in perimenopause or not. And I felt like it was a simple and important episode to record to help you answer that question. Because I think in a lot of the cases with these women that I'm talking to, it's like they know something feels different. They can't quite tell what's going on. And personally, I feel like that's probably a great sign that you're coming into perimenopause. If you are somewhere in your 30s, 40s, it's not necessarily an age. It's more like, how are you feeling, right? So I wanted to just talk about that today, talk a little bit about how it relates to human design, and then also share with you a bit of a new resource that I have created for you called the Perimenopause Survival Guide. So there's this myth, I don't know if it's a myth. It's probably true for at least a lot of the population, this idea of the midlife crisis, right? And I guess I just want to poke at that a little bit to say that it doesn't have to be a crisis, or it doesn't have to feel like a crisis, and or maybe we can just reposition or reconsider that word crisis to be a bit more empowering. If crisis is something that wakes you up, then yes, certainly we could call it a midlife crisis. But it sometimes is a very gentle awakening, a very long, like over a long period of time awakening. And it can happen with all sorts of things in your life where you just start questioning your life choices. Am I in the right career? Do I still want to do this? Did I choose the right thing for myself? Do I even like this anymore? Same thing with your relationships. Same thing with the kinds of things that you value in your life. You might notice that your values are changing. And I think I've told this story before, but I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she was talking about how she just felt like something had to change. And she said, well, I can't leave my husband, so it's not going to be that. And I can't leave where we live because I do really love it here, so it's not going to be that. So I guess it's going to be my job. And I think there's so much truth in that, just desire to have something new it's this deep craving for something different and to shake things up in your life. And I think it has a lot to do with pushing aside your truth and pushing aside your freedom for so many years. And you just get to this point where you can't tolerate it anymore, essentially. So I think that perimenopause happens during this midlife phase, and the fact that they're coinciding is no mistake. It's like the hormonal chaos is helping us to see things more clearly because it's so present in our bodies. We can feel the symptoms, and they're so disruptive to our lives that we have to start questioning things and just wondering, okay, are the choices that I've made thus far really in alignment with who I am, or who I'm becoming, who I want to be? And notice that I also just want to make the point that it's not necessarily an age that perimenopause hits because it's such a transitional phase. It's like 10 years or so, 7 to 10 years, right? Before you have your last period. And then the definition technically for menopause is that you haven't had a cycle, a menstrual cycle for a full year. So it's perimenopause is just the phase before that. It's the coming into that phase when, if you've listened to the pod before, how I've talked about the science of your estrogen cycle, spiking. Your body is trying to push out or trying to basically get the last of your eggs to say, hey, come on board, let's have another cycle. And, so you get these wild swings where your brain tries to kind of make up for your dodgy or slow body, your ovaries just kind of slowing down and being done with their job. And so you're in this phase where you've got hormonal chaos happening, and it does come on at a different time for everybody, right? It's a very individual kind of thing. And so I think that makes it a little bit more challenging to understand whether you're in that phase or not. And I also feel like for those of us who feel well into perimenopause and are more on the cusp of menopause and or in menopause ourselves, it's really being able to look back in retrospect and say, oh, that's what was happening. Yeah, now I can see in retrospect what was happening in my life and maybe where I was feeling like I needed something new, where I was feeling like I needed to make some shifts and changes, and then realizing that, oh, I bet some hormone chaos was happening there as well. And I also just want to say that oftentimes this midlife phase, this perimenopausal phase with these hormone changes coincides with a spiritual awakening. And, listen, I am not religious. I am, however, and I consider myself very deeply entrenched in understanding what the divine is all about and how it is a part of us as humans. And I think that the hormonal chaos and havoc of a woman's life in particular can be such a gift because it forces us to be more in our bodies and to listen to what our bodies are telling us. And I think that is the way to connect with the divine. And I just think that a lot of people have sort of this spiritual awakening during this time because you really are reassessing so much in your life. So I wanted to talk about some of the specific signs of perimenopause, the specific physical symptoms in particular that are maybe most common. And as I've mentioned, there's a list of like 80. I heard recently like 100 symptoms. To me, it just feels like if you're breathing in this age, then, it could be perimenopause. But there are definitely some shifts that happen in your body. And so I wanted to just list a couple of those things for you to consider. Are these things starting to make an appearance in your life? And if so, and you're not sure if you're in perimenopause, then these are probably indicators that you are. So, anxiety is one of the things that can oftentimes be overlooked, but like racing thoughts or panic attacks, that was something that happened to me as I was coming into perimenopause, which was kind of crazy. I had never experienced that before, and it was terrifying to have that happen. Night sweats, kind of a classic example. Brain fog. This can be something that I think women explain away pretty easily, but is definitely a symptom of perimenopause. Rage, feeling ragey, feeling like killy, stabby with the fork, kind of, where you just really want to tear somebody's head off. I'm thinking about some of my colleagues that I was working with and some of the conversations I had with them. And yeah, thinking back to those, I could see where some of my colleagues might have been in perimenopause. And I was the recipient of the head getting bitten off. I'm sure you can think of some examples where that's happened to you as well. Some other things that may happen are food sensitivities. So you might find that you're actually more sensitive to specific foods or even things like alcohol. You can't go out and have a glass of wine like you used to. I know for me, I would go out and have a glass of wine and then pay for it at night, just with night sweats and disrupted sleep, and just got to the point where I just don't drink much wine anymore. And if I do, I'm very, very particular about what it is, as I've mentioned before. Uh, your libido might take a hit, how you're feeling about having sex at all. Gut changes, both the food sensitivity, your microbiome especially, and also just weight gain, hot flashes, feeling itchy, feeling really tired or exhausted. These are some of kind of the more common symptoms. And these things can show up years before your periods even start to change, which is, of course, another symptom when you start to skip periods or you start to have different flows, there are changes in the way that you're bleeding. I will just mention that all of these things warrant a trip to your physician because they can also indicate other things. It's not necessarily just perimenopause, so it's worth looking into if you're having these symptoms to just go and have a conversation and know what is happening in your body when you go to your physician. And don't be brushed off if your intuition is telling you that you need support in some way. Oftentimes, women are put onto antidepressants during perimenopause when it's actually something like HRT might be a better fit. So, talk to your doctor about what's going on and see, you could potentially get something that, like a medication. However, I really want to encourage you to use these physical symptoms as an invitation to listen to your body and ask it, what do you need from me? And, taking a medication is kind of a classic approach for especially the United States or the Western world, right? Whenever something's wrong, we go to the doctor, we get a medicine, take it, and all is well. But what we miss in that is actually getting to the root cause of the problem. And I think this is where in perimenopause, we have so many symptoms coming up because we've been living this life that doesn't fit us. It's not meant for us the way that we've been living it, hustle culture or living much more into the masculine and shoving the feminine down. So, what I I really want to encourage you to use these symptoms as an inquiry project for yourself and just help yourself to discover what does your body actually need. And more often than not, it's slowing the fuck down with one thing or another, taking stuff off of your plate and just allowing for your body to make its way through this transition in a way that it feels supported, that you give yourself the time that you need for your body to recover from the hormonal shifts and you give yourself the rest that you need. So I have an extensive list in my perimenopause survival guide, and you can just use it to go through and check off. This is, yes, I'm experiencing this. And then take it to your doctor, take it to your naturopath, take it to, whomever is offering you support and have a conversation. Because I think determining whether you're in perimenopause or not it's not necessarily an exact science. I mean, yes, you can measure the hormones, but when you're thinking about it yourself, it's more looking at how many of the symptoms that you have and determining like, okay, I think I'm in this transition phase. Again, it's a transition phase. So, and it's so long, right? It can be hard to understand when you're actually in it. But I think the question to ask yourself is, are all of these symptoms disrupting your life enough so that you actually want to change something? So, again, these symptoms are not just physical, they're invitations, okay? And some of the life themes that come up during this phase are that sense of purpose. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Have I made the right choices? And what do I want to do going forward? And especially if you're Gen X or an older millennial, so many of us have been conditioned to believe that you get on one track and you stay there for your entire life. And I actually just read somewhere that the average age of new entrepreneurs is 47, which blew my mind. That was actually the time that I left teaching. And it just made me realize, like, wow, that is so cool. 47 is the average age. It's like maybe we're moving into it. I mean, clearly we're moving into this shift where maybe people did do something for the first, 20 years of their career lives, stayed there, and then pivoted to, in this case, be entrepreneurs. But there are so many different possibilities. And what breaks my heart is when women just feel like they need to stay because they only have a few more years left, or whatever the case may be in whatever area of their life. It's like they're trying to just explain away, well, I want to stay here because, when they know that it's actually not right for them. So, some other things that aren't necessarily physical things that you could be experiencing besides this questioning who you are and your identity and your purpose is the whole idea of giving less fucks, which actually is tied to your physical because that has to do with the decline in estrogen. But when you're no longer tolerating bullshit from other people, that's definitely a sign of being in perimenopause. Also, I think being more sensitive to other people with the heightened moods and the mood changes, I think you can start to be in this phase more sensitive to taking on other people's energy. And this is where looking at your human design could be really informative for you. You can look at how much openness you have in your chart and start to wonder, like, where have I actually been operating in my not self by taking on other people's energy in these areas and acting like that instead of just letting that flow, being more open and understanding that that part of me is very changeable. Related to that is this idea of how human design can help you. For example, each type can very much experience perimenopause differently. You may, for example, if you're a projector and you've reached midlife, you may be so freaking burnt out from living like a generator that you're literally, maybe something happens like chronic fatigue syndrome, or you find that these really, what's the word I'm looking for? Your health takes a nosedive because you have been pushing for so long. Just as an example, and really for any non-sacral being, I think, who has been living in the hustle culture and letting herself be swiped into that, which, I mean, how do you avoid it? It's really hard. I get that. And I think during this phase of life, when you understand how your energy is meant to work and you can make some shifts and changes in whatever job you're in or changes at home, then those are things that can really swing the pendulum in your direction and get things working a lot better. Another thing, of course, that can be a game changer is learning your authority, learning how to make decisions that feel aligned for you because you're making them with your body and you're in partnership. You're letting your body actually take the lead and trying to get your mind to take a back seat in your decision making. The Perimenopause Survival Guide will give you a breakdown, very specific and personalized breakdown of insights for your type to help support you during this phase of life. So I just want to wrap up by saying that perimenopause and midlife is, yes, challenging. It's no mistake that all of these symptoms come on for women. And I think the fact that there are so many tells us so much about the life that we are living, the way that we are living, and how disconnected we get from ourselves when we live this way. And so I think that in a, a challenging, yes, but really beautiful way, that midlife and perimenopause are a portal for us to actually come home to ourselves, right? So I would love for you to check out the Perimenopause Survival Guide. I have Survival View. And so it just means that I'm tuned into like what we need to survive on a very basic level. And I also have need motivation. So I kind of want to get right to it. And you've probably noticed that. I was kind of laughing about this episode because I'm like, this is classic Lori. I dive right in to the meat and I forget that I have to like prep the roll first or whatever. This is a horrible, horrible analogy. Okay. um, what I mean to say is that oftentimes I skip over the introduction because I just want to get to the meat of what I am trying to say. And I realized when I came up with this episode idea, like, shit, I probably should have recorded this as like episode 1 or 2, but hey, here we are 50 plus episodes in, and I am talking about it. And it really came from response, like I said, because I started having conversations with more women who are in their 30s, and they were saying, I don't even know. How do I know if I'm in perimenopause? And well, maybe I should know about that for the future. And I'm thinking, girl, I wish I had known it when I was your age. So I invite you to download the Perimenopause Survival Guide. And if you have friends who are in that phase of life or coming into it, then please share it with them. I think it will be super helpful and effective in bringing some clarity. And the main thing I want you to know during this phase of life and just in general is that you are not broken. This is just a phase, but more importantly, it's an invitation back to who you truly are and who you came here to be. So thank you so much for listening, and I wish you all a beautiful, beautiful week. Talk soon. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Midlife by Design. As always, I hope you know how very, very appreciative I am that you took time out of your day to listen to this podcast. And please click the link in the show notes for the Perimenopause Survival Guide. I am so excited about this resource. It's something that I wish I had had 10 years ago. It totally would have changed the game for me. And I am so glad that I am able to share it with you now. So the link is in the show notes. And I also wanted to mention that if you are feeling stuck, you're feeling like you want to dive into your human design and work with somebody being me, during this perimenopause midlife phase of life, to get some more clarity, to get unstuck, to figure out what the hell you're supposed to be doing with your life, then I have one-to-one coaching spots available for this. I guess for the next few months is usually how they roll. So if you're interested, the link to apply for that will be in the show notes as well. And the application is really just an opportunity for me to get to know a little bit about what's going on. It's a chance for you to write about it. If you would rather book a call with me and have a conversation, just send me a DM on Instagram and we can work that out. So, as always, I am sending you strength to let go of what no longer serves you, joy to fill your days, and the clarity to be who you came here to be.